we spoke about this a lot during the campaign, and I think that it was a very legitimate story that encapsulated what people were nervous about if Shorten became Prime Minister, and it was the story of the bloke who worked at the port in Queensland. Remember? This was the Gladstone Port where the bloke asked a question of Bill Shorten. Now, he was apparently on site enough that the port, that's owned by the Queensland government, decided to put him in front of Bill Shorten. He then asks a question about, look, some of these blokes are earning on 230 grand, dangerous work, overtime, all those reasons that they were earning a reasonable whack. Bill Shorten, of course, stumbles by bullshitting to those people that something was coming their way. What happened the next day? His pass didn't work. He wasn't back at work for another 3 weeks. And then the only time that his suspension was lifted was after the Courier Mail picked up the phone. Today, the boss of the Gladstone Ports has been sacked. Remember last week there was a Queensland government review that was going to happen, and it was punted off to Treasury. This was something that was, now I don't know whether the decision was always going to be this way, but certainly after what's happened at the election, some accountability. And I think this is an important way to end this.
Well, it is. It's a very important thing to note, but it's part of a broader trend where so many bosses in Australia think they own the words, the beliefs and the values of their staff. They own their political views, their religious views, what's happened with Israel Folau. This is one of the most insidious acts of tyranny in our society today. The assumption of the corporate elites, whether it's a port boss or people at the running some of the biggest companies in the country, who think they own their staff and their views. I mean, well, it's a trend that's just about everywhere. I've got another example I'm working on at the moment, but you just wouldn't believe the arrogance and the smugness of these bosses in what they think they can do in owning the political and religious views of their employees. And this is something we must push back against big time.
Well, and Corey, I just think this is the perfect bow. This is the thing that needed to be said, because this is the way it worked, right? Now, of course, Bill Shorten didn't point at somebody and said, please, off with his head. Instead, the system just found a way to level this bloke out. He was small enough to crush, and the assumption was no one would notice. That this bloke, that this worker, for simply embarrassing the king because the king was an idiot.
We asked the question in a democratic process.
Correct. Instead, he's off, he's out the thing, no money, had 3 kids to feed. Well, of course, the deal was, look the other way, look the other way. Accountability is important in this stuff here, and I think that this was one of those emblematic things that the rest of the media, remember, they didn't want to touch this story. It didn't go anywhere other than the front page of the Courier Mail, but I know for a fact that this was the type of story that proved was the anecdotal example of what people were concerned about a more authoritarian government where the king doesn't have to do anything, the minions do it for them.
This is right, Paul. It is all about the symbolism that was attached to elements in the campaign. I found that a compelling thought, because you recognise the thought police are in charge. Israel Folau, I think what happened to him, as Mark mentioned, also played into it. You know, what is happening to our freedoms? I questioned myself. I said, what happened to those 2 blokes who refused to shake Bill Shorten's hand?
Find that footage, Josh. That's the one. That's the one when Murray's coach is secretly controlled by Paul Murray, got in touch with the bus drivers.
Have they still got a job?
Well, that's it.
I hope so.
That's the big question. You know, the symbolism of Penny Wong, as I brought up before, the sneering of them whenever they were questioned by other journalists. It was just such a symptom of the times, and I think the people got it so right. They had optimism, or they had this controlling lack of trust in the people. And it's, the mob, as Richo says, gets it right, and they sure did this time.
Well, and to be fair, as I said to Richo, you got the mob wrong too this time around.
He did, yeah.
I think those guys should have shaken his hand. I mean, we need civility in politics, and I think Penny Wong was wrong in not shaking Simon Birmingham's hand, and I called that out during the campaign as well. We need civility in politics, and I want people to be able to have freedom of speech and freedom of expression and be able to state their political views in their workplaces, but we need civility, and if someone extends a hand to you...
No, but it was about Shorten's assumption that everyone in high vis is under the thumb of the union boss. That was the thing, that there's no normal person who wears high vis.
Yeah, it's the consequences of it, mate, that are the question.